like coming here. I didn't know how many people were going to be here, but like I'm really amazed at how many people came out. So thank you guys for the support. I really.
They didn't just lose her. They never understood her. That was the whispered sentence. The one insiders say shattered BMW's confidence the moment Coco Gauff walked away. And if that line already stings, wait until you hear what happened behind closed doors. Because this wasn't a simple sponsorship breakup. It was the moment a global superstar realized she was bigger than the brand trying to contain her. Imagine this. Coco, just off the biggest wins of her career, is sitting in a glass-walled boardroom in Munich. She's surrounded by executives in immaculate suits, the kind who speak in polished corporate metaphors and think authenticity is something you can print onto a poster. One of them slides a proposal across the table. The same usual script, the same staged commercials, the same sterile vision. And Coco, she doesn't even touch the paper. People who were there swear she said just 7 words, quietly but firmly, "I'm done being a logo for you." That was the turning point. The air changed. Silence. A silence heavy enough to break careers. From the outside, it always looked perfect. Coco driving BMWs to tournaments, smiling in their ads, becoming the fresh young face of a German engineering giant. But beneath the surface, cracks were spreading. She wanted campaigns that meant something. She wanted space to lead sustainability initiatives, voice real issues, and connect with the generation that actually idolized her. BMW just wanted another athlete in a well-lit studio, and that mismatch, that tension between heart and brand, would become their downfall. Because Coco didn't just walk away. She walked straight into the arms of the one company bold enough to let her reshape their future, Mercedes-Benz. And here's the real twist. People think Mercedes swooped in out of luck, out of timing. But the truth is far sharper, almost ruthless. They had been watching the cracks form for months. They had quietly assembled teams, drafted creative blueprints, calculated the long-term cultural value of a rising superstar. When BMW hesitated, Mercedes didn't blink. This wasn't a reaction. This was a plan. A plan that would explode into a $90 million deal. The biggest cultural coup in recent sponsorship history. A plan that would send shockwaves through the sports world, the automotive world, and even the political conversations around athlete influence. A plan that would change Coco's life and rewrite BMW's humiliation into a global headline. But before all of that, there was this first fracture. This moment when Coco decided her voice mattered more than their blueprint. And if you think this revelation's dramatic, buckle up, because Mercedes' next move makes this look like a warm-up. Picture this. New York City, 2 days after Coco's U.S. Open triumph. It's late. Midtown is glowing. In a rooftop suite near Bryant Park, 3 Mercedes executives are sitting with Coco's team. Not public relations officers, not regional marketing leads. These were decision makers. The people who sign $1 billion budgets and reshape global branding strategy. Their first sentence wasn't a negotiation. It wasn't even an offer. It was a promise. We will not clip your wings. From that moment, every chess piece fell exactly where Mercedes wanted. They didn't show her a car brochure. They showed her a blueprint for cultural influence. Full creative authority over campaigns, leadership roles in environmental projects, a sustainable initiative co-branded with her name, a fleet of cars at her disposal, and finally the number that would shock the sporting world, $90 million across 7 years. But the money wasn't what made Coco lean forward. It was the sentence that followed. We don't want you in our ads. We want you at our table. That is the line BMW never dared to say. And while this was unfolding, BMW had no idea. They still believed Coco was negotiating in good faith. They were preparing another meeting with another stack of creative guidelines and bland corporate phrases. Meanwhile, Mercedes were operating on an entirely different plane. They'd already planned the reveal. They'd mapped out the global reaction, especially in Britain, where Coco's growing fan base had become one of the most influential markets for tennis viewership outside the U.S. They knew how British audiences valued authenticity, courage, and legacy building. Mercedes didn't just see Coco as a player. They saw her as a generational symbol. Then came the masterstroke. In Beijing, one of the most strategically important premium car markets on Earth, Mercedes rolled out their flagship EQS in front of a crowd that didn't yet know what was coming. Coco stepped out in white and silver, dazzling under the lights as cameras snapped furiously. Instant headlines, instant credibility, instant humiliation for BMW. Because this wasn't just an endorsement announcement. This was a power play, staged on the world's largest stage. British fans watching online didn't just see a tennis champion. They saw a young woman stepping into the role of global ambassador, a symbol of change, a voice of a generation that refuses to be treated like decoration. Mercedes knew exactly what they were buying: her momentum, her conviction, her cultural influence, and the future of younger audiences. BMW, meanwhile, had been selling cars. Mercedes was buying history. And the moment that Beijing EQS reveal hit social media, the chess match was over. One side was celebrating, the other was scrambling for explanations. When the Beijing reveal hit the internet, the world didn't react quietly. It erupted. Within hours, British timelines were flooded. Clips of Coco stepping out of the EQS racked up millions of views. The Guardian ran a column calling the deal a generational shift in athlete brand power. Even BBC Sport pushed a breaking banner highlighting Mercedes' bold cultural gamble. But inside BMW headquarters, silence, the heavy, suffocating kind. Because the blow wasn't just emotional, it was financial. Bloomberg reported a sudden surge in brand valuation for Mercedes, triggering a ripple of investor frustration across BMW's European markets. British shareholders, notoriously unforgiving, wanted answers. How did a German icon lose the most valuable young athlete on the planet? How did Mercedes capture the moment BMW let slip through their fingers? One internal memo leaked weeks later summed it up in one painful sentence: "We underestimated her influence." And that influence was about to become a global earthquake. Social media across Britain went wild. Memes of Coco cruising past BMW's headquarters in a gleaming EQS flooded X and TikTok. Fans joked that BMW had been outplayed by Gen Z's queen, while others praised Coco for standing up for purpose-driven branding. British teenagers, young professionals, even retired tennis lovers, they all seemed to share the same sentiment. Finally, an athlete who uses her platform for something real. But this wasn't just public excitement. It was cultural momentum. When Serena Williams posted, "This is what power looks like," the message reverberated through British media for days. Naomi Osaka added, "Deals like this change the industry." And they were right, because Coco's 90 La Phase you know it is a signature didn't just elevate her. It raised the ceiling for every female athlete, especially those on British soil who had spent years watching male stars dominate the sponsorship game. Suddenly, young British players, from rising tennis prodigies to Olympic hopefuls, were questioning the old hierarchy. Why should women settle for smaller deals? Why shouldn't their voices matter just as much as their results? Coco had become a symbol, a movement, a disruption that no one in Munich saw coming. But Mercedes? They had predicted every wave. The moment their EQS advert dropped, the now iconic clip of Coco driving through neon-lit Riyadh with a quiet monologue about owning your future, British social media exploded again. The video wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, it was intimate, reflective, raw. And it went viral not because she was in it, but because people felt it. BMW tried to counteract the damage, rushing to sign a young European footballer in an attempt to shift public focus. But everyone saw it for what it was, a desperate patch on a sinking ship. Analysts across London called it reactionary branding, a polite British way of saying, you panicked. And maybe they did, because this wasn't just a marketing misstep. This was the kind of corporate failure studied for years in business schools. The moment a brand misses the cultural moment staring them in the face. For British audiences watching it unfold, the story wasn't just about two car companies. It was about recognition, respect, and the price of undervaluing someone who refuses to be invisible. But what comes next? That's the real mystery. Because Coco has the deal, the spotlight, and the world watching. Yet with all that power comes pressure. Crushing, invisible, relentless pressure. For weeks after the deal went public, the world celebrated Coco Gauff as if she had already rewritten history. Headlines praised her. Social media worshipped her. Brands studied her like a new formula. And Mercedes? They stood in the center of it all, proudly presenting her as the future. Not just of tennis, not just of sport, but of culture. But here's the part no one talks about. What happens when the applause fades? What happens when the pressure of a $90 million promise sits on the shoulders of a 20-year-old superstar who suddenly carries the expectations of millions? Because make no mistake, this deal didn't just elevate Coco. It put her under a microscope the size of Wembley Stadium. Every performance now has stakes. Every appearance is analyzed. Every social post becomes part of a corporate strategy. Every win adds to her legend. But every loss? It sparks questions Mercedes never wants to hear. British commentators have already begun murmuring about the weight of the deal. Sports psychologists warn that visibility at this scale can either forge greatness or fracture it. Coco's no longer just a tennis player. She's a global ambassador, a cultural disruptor, and the face of a multi-billion-pound sustainability revolution. And that's a heavy load for anyone, let alone someone still carving her legacy. But then again, Coco has never been afraid of the storm. In interviews, she smiles when asked about pressure. She says impact matters more than numbers. She talks about wanting to build something beyond trophies, something meaningful, something lasting. And that's precisely why Mercedes bet so big on her. They didn't pay for her ranking. They paid for her conviction. Still, every revolution has its risk. If Coco continues on her upward trajectory, this deal becomes a blueprint for the next generation, especially here in Britain where young athletes are watching her redefine what power looks like. But if she stumbles, if the spotlight burns instead of elevates, critics will be waiting, investors will be waiting, rivals will be waiting, and the question hanging over Mercedes, over the entire sporting world, is brutally simple. Did they sign a champion? Or did they create expectations no human being could ever carry? Only time will give us the answer. But one thing is certain. Coco Gauff is no longer just playing tennis. She's playing for history. She's playing for a generation that refuses to be overlooked. She's playing for every young athlete who has ever been told to stay in their lane. And as this new chapter unfolds, we, the fans, the viewers, the witnesses, have front row seats to the rise of a movement that could reshape the future of sport. So now I'll leave you with this final question. If you were Coco, would you have taken the $90 million deal? Or would the pressure be too much for you to carry? Let me know your thoughts below. I read every single comment. And if this story opened your eyes or gave you something to think about, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who loves sport, and subscribe so you never miss the next deep dive into the real stories behind the headlines. Because trust me, this is only the beginning.